So I took college twice. So I had a bachelor's degree in computer science and then tried to work as a software engineer, but didn't feel quite like it. And then my frustrated teacher in me wanted to come out, and so I wanted to take something in the education space. And of course, as typical Chinese families would go, they would say that there's now room for growth in the teaching space. And so I tried to find teaching in a different realm, and I found L&D and HR to be quite close. And so I found myself studying 3.5 more years in college to finish another degree in HR. Right? And so that made me a techy HR as I knew software, and then I also knew HR. My first job was the first job and only job I applied for, which is to be a headhunter for technical accounts. So I would hire software engineers, program managers, scrum masters, agile, whatever you name it. We had it. And I was quite successful in landing these software engineers better jobs. And that kind of made me reinforce my passion towards HR because I felt like this job can really impact lives. I can see somebody who is aspiring to get married, and when I was able to help that person find a new job that would pay more or maybe closer to their home, it gave that person the resources that he needs to save up and turn that wedding into reality, right? So it's really having a very direct impact and influence on somebody's life that I felt that I could find in HR but couldn't find in software engineering. And so my client at that time was Nokia. So we had a very meaningful and very fruitful partnership. I hired a lot of engineers for them, and so they wanted to acquire me from the headhunting company. But of course, there are non-compete clauses signed in between, and so I had to sunset that non-compete clause somewhere else. So I joined another company called PSG, and that was also my first glimpse into L&D. So I joined their learning team, and my job was to train customer service or technical service representatives that they have in their roster and turn them into phone recruiters for the US market. So it was quite serendipitous because I was able to bring in my software engineering background because they were hiring technical, and then my HR background to teach people how to do HR. I stayed there for a year, and then I think the modules that I have helped create are still being used to this day, which is a very proud moment for me. But then Nokia was waiting, so I joined Nokia. And then Nokia, I stayed there for 6 years and 7 months. And that's really where I really sink my teeth into HR. So I was able to do recruitment all the way to OD. The only thing I didn't touch there was probably payroll. Right? And then when I left Nokia as the PMO for Southeast Asia, that was kind of the moment where Canva knocked on my door. But also that story was a bit weird because I have a friend inside Canva who I mentored back in PSG. The world was truly small, and they were looking for an HR business partner that they couldn't seem to find the right fit. So I gave my CV in the hope that they could use that CV as a benchmark for finding HR VPs in the market. My friend did was he sent my CV to the hiring manager, and then I was scheduled for a brief chat, and then that chat became an interview. The interview became an assessment, and then the rest was history. I was hired as their first HR people partner or the people partner for the Philippines. And then before my first year, the head of HR of the Philippine campus was moved into country manager. And so that role was left vacant, and I was the most eligible bachelor at the time. And so I was given that role temporarily in the hope that they would hire somebody to replace me. And I could go back to people partnering. And COVID happened. And so in 2020, I was officialized into the role, and what was my first ever promotion into leadership. Right, so I was always been an individual contributor prior to Canva, and so when I joined the company as an IC, and then moving up into a very senior role, inheriting the HR team on the ground was both a pleasant surprise, but also quite frightening. Since it's a startup, I'm the new guy on the block. I didn't know how things work. The people had their affinities towards their old boss, because I have to win them so that I could have them, sort of support me in the strategies and the goals that we have in place while navigating a pandemic. So it's a very, yeah, I would say, a very unique experience, but I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Tell us more about going from a bigger, more established corporation. And for those, I guess, in the newer generation, maybe they've never even used a Nokia phone. For me, I've definitely used a Nokia mobile phone, like, since young. Going from a large corporation, very mature policy and processes, everything, to a bit more of a startup environment. What was that like for you as you pick it up and make that transition?
So, of course, when you come and join an organization that is quite big and stable, I would say the biggest thing that you can't deny is that everything is set in stone, right? The processes, the policies, the programs, all of them are essentially established already. There's very little wiggle room to inject new things, right? Also, because it has gone through a very rigorous process of vetoing what works and what doesn't. It has a very robust safety net when something goes wrong, right? I think that is what is significantly absent when you go to startups, right? You have a lot more authorship on what you can do, what you can inject. Anything new is welcome. Any idea is given the space to be sort of played with, right? But also at the same time, there's no safety net, right? Apart from people putting their hand up saying that they would support you to make sure that you can get these goals across the line. When something fails, essentially it fails, and then you have to move on, right? And hopefully the damage is not significant, or the lessons learned from that failure supersedes, the damage or the loss, right? Thankfully, though, in my experience, I would say that Nokia, though, despite it being a 150-year-old company when I was there, was still quite open to a little bit of change, right? And so, especially during my time when I was sort of the PMO in my last year there, we were toying around, you know, revitalizing the HR programs over there. And I can really see that temp and the drive to stay new and innovate despite being a very old company. So I was able to sort of bring that experience into Canva, right? Um, the biggest advice I got when I first joined Canva was to not turn Canva into Nokia. Because technically, when I was hired, I told them that hey, I can really bring in value, but that value is pretty much influenced by how I did it back in my old company. So when I joined Canva, I felt like I had to Canvafy myself, and I think this speaks true to many startups because many startups are still quite founder-led, right? So the founders have very much hands-on um, influence into how businesses run. What makes my experience at Canva quite unique is that the culture remains strong from the moment I joined to the moment I left. And so every thing that we did had the same North Star, which is our Canva values. Right? Um, Although it wasn't quite easy, many things have gone wrong. Many experiments have not succeeded. But I guess because there is a high appetite to try and do and create the best products or the best programs. All these stumbling that happened early on helped pave the way to have us create really good things that make Canva truly unique. And I think that in my 7 years there, I was very fortunate to be part of those early days. Um, but also have been there long enough to see how these little beginnings evolve over time to become uh, the company that it is today.
A very interesting thought here. I think you might be different from, let's say, someone else who purely comes from HR background on just maybe on the people side because you yourself have a software engineering background. So whilst you were at these two firms, were there moments where you were itching to think like, could I go back to maybe a bit more of the tech side of this product or like, of this company? Or were you like, no, like, HR is definitely the lane that I'm just going to stick around for? What was that kind of like thought process like? Has that happened to you?
Oh, I definitely had an out of person experience many times, especially when dealing with very sensitive people matters, when it comes to, let's say, as big as redundancies, as small as terminations, right? There's there's a piece of me, Katie, that would say, hey, if you just stayed with your computers and with your keyboard, you wouldn't have to go through all this drama, right? Some voices in my head will also say, you put so much work, you've been in so many meetings, and yet you earn this much. If you're a software engineer right now, you could have earned this much, but then with, I would say, less effort, right? But then I go back to my original why, right? Why did I study HR and why did I choose it? And I had to remind myself often, especially in my early years where I can get overwhelmed quite easily, as to, yes, these are wrinkles in time, right? That you can have very difficult moments, but that's about what they are. These are moments. These are not prolonged periods of difficulty. Like if I were to look back in the last 365 days, I would say maybe 40 days were difficult and heavy, but then you will have like 320 days of uh, really pleasant experience. And I wouldn't say that that is not unique to HR. I think any role or any role in any company will have their high days and low days, right? But for me, I think why I stayed this long in this role is because the things that we're able to do and the people that we're able to help and support to achieve whatever they want in life uh, outweighs all the all the difficulties, all the little things that happen along the way. Yes, at that time it can feel very heavy, but I always tell myself if I look back maybe 4 weeks after, it might be a small thing already. So it's really trying to stay grounded that this is temporary, but what we're doing in this role, in this craft, in this industry, it will far outweigh the challenges that come with it.
Now, with all of that said, I remember when we first got connected, it was a post about you taking a career break. And how did that decision come as part of your career trajectory or planning? And what was it like so far to actually be on a break?
So I've never had a break before. So this is my first ever career break. And what got me into this process of thinking about whether it's the right timing or am I taking a break in the right company, you know? Because there are moments where I felt like I want to leave, right? Not take a break, but to leave, right? And move to a different company. But oftentimes the common denominator of these moments are or is emotion. The emotions are what drove me into wanting to make that decision. For this particular career break, it wasn't emotion. It was more around life that I was missing in the roles that I also have apart from being an HR person. So I'm a dad of two, and I had my first kid during the pandemic. And so that was also my first year at Canva. And so I felt like I had to pursue um, my career so I can provide a safety net for my family during a very ambiguous, scary time of our lives, right? This COVID-19. Um, so that justified me wanting to continue and push forward. So imagine what's going through my head, Katie. So I just moved to a new company. I'm a country HR, which is the first time ever in my career. The team that I inherited, I barely knew. And we had a very ambitious plans, which is to grow to 500 people. At the time, we were around 240-ish. Right? And then we had to move everything from offline to online while delivering Canva's promise to become a very valuable company, right? So, but I had to do that because I had something to do it for, which is family. Fast forward a couple of years later, me and my wife wanted to have another baby. Unfortunately, we lost that one. Right? At that time, Canva was also pivoting into going international, right? And so all the hopes and dreams of the company was on the table. And I also didn't want to lose the opportunity to ride that wave. Like I said, this is a new role for me. I've never really expanded an organization across the Philippine borders. I want to see what that looks like. So I decided to stay. Although first Canva being a very generous organization, they were able to afford me and give me the time to grieve and really be with my family during these times. But also I think it was my own doing that made me push myself to go back to the job sooner than later because me and my wife figured out we don't want to stay in this sort of very low moment in our lives and try to have some resemblance of normalcy if we could. So I went back to work earlier than scheduled, uh, which which worked out pretty well. I was able to see the new goals through, um, and I think life reciprocated in many different blessings. So I'm very grateful for that. Fast forward for a couple of years, we tried again, and then I have my daughter, which turned one this year. Um, and then that moment kind of made me realize one thing that my family is growing in the sidelines while I'm focusing on my own growth in my career. And I felt like I wanted to flip the script even just for a moment and focus on what I haven't been paying close attention to. So, and it was also at that right timing where we already fully launched Southeast Asia. I had people in my team who can carry the work forward. There's also a change in leadership within the Philippine campus, which I think was also, I would say, the right time, I would say, to give new beginnings and inject fresh blood into leadership. And because I also had my job sort of figured out, so transitions was very easy. Everybody knew what they had to do. I felt like it was my graduation. Yeah, I felt like okay, I've done all the schoolwork, I've done all the homework. Now it's time to go. So I left with the intention to really focus on family. Like I said, I have some home constructions happening while we're doing this. So I'm really paying attention to things that have been in the back burner for quite a while. But also to go back to my kids who are growing very quickly, and also to my wife who's been keeping the family sort of together for the last 7 years. So I haven't regretted this decision, and I feel like I want to maximize it because, of course, you don't take breaks often. It reduces the value of these breaks, right? So you want to stage this, and so I'm also quite keen to see what's next for me, keeping my options open. And yeah,
And when you make that decision of saying, I'm just gonna take a career break, were there people around you that were like the most surprised by this decision?
definitely, I think my team, I think the entire organization in the Philippines kind of felt a bit surprised and caught off guard, right? Because I've been in this role for the longest time, right? So a little bit of context. I'm the first people partner. I'm also the first country HR before any other countries came to be. I've seen the HR people come and go. I've outlasted them, many of them. Majority of the campus has also gone through me through hiring, right? So I would say that I'm a pillar within the campus. I wouldn't say that I'm glorifying myself here, but just saying that just to um, I would say create a metaphor, right? I'm a household name. So so when you suddenly say that you're leaving, of course it would, you know, rattle some people. But then after I explained to them why, I think all of them did understand because they, I think, saw how much I would give um, for the company. You know, um,
mm,
not saying that you should do this, but like when people slack me at 11 p.m., I will still reply. You know, if there's an
mm,
emergency, I will be there. If somebody's on the, if somebody's on the other line who's trying to commit self-harm, I would quickly jump in and take over the call. Like, really hands-on. There's no job too big or too small, right? And I think there's no denying that when I said that I wanted to take a break and really just rest, people
mm,
knew they kind of needed it as
mm,
well. And so they reluctantly but happily let me go. Right?
mm.
Um, but I'm also happy where they are right now. So they're taking on larger roles, bigger responsibilities, having to deal with stakeholders that I used to middleman for them. Right? And so it's really seeing them stretch uh, their wings and really take ownership of this very long runway that they have. I think is a testament that I've done, I would say, a good job before I leave.
And so far, how long has it been since you were from your first day of the break till now?
So this is my 30th day, so my first
Wow.
month. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's been 4 weeks of doing absolutely different things.
Mm,
I posted it on LinkedIn that my calendar has changed. It's now about sending and fetching my kid from school, accompanying them to their math tutors, doing home renovation, um, you know, tending to the kids while my wife gets herself pampered,
mm,
which she couldn't do back when I was still quite busy with
mm,
work. So I would say, and I also did a little bit of traveling with my parents. I'm an only child as well. There's
mm,
another layer. So, if I'm busy, my parents can't get a hold of me. I reached a point, Katie, where my mom had to send me a calendar invite just
mm,
to talk to me
mm,
about something that's happening in their house that needs fixing,
mm,
or dad wants to go to a country that they're quite worried about. How they go to their immigrations through because it's all QR thing, and my dad's not a techie person. So
mm.
I've been that busy, and so this feeling of, I would say I would say freedom is a welcome breath of fresh air.
I think you also represent some of the very typical example. Like I can resonate a lot with that, where I'm the only child, and sometimes you get sandwiched between the different family kind of commitments and obligations, and to a point where sometimes we get so busy with chasing the next milestone, right, for the career or kind of like your life thing, you forgot that you can just have a conversation with like your parents, and it could literally be just about nothing, right? I also like to know what was your kids' reactions where you're not going to work these days.
So back when I was still working and it would be in a Zoom call, right? My son would come home from school and then would wave hello to whoever it is I'm talking to. And my kid would tell whoever it is, hey, can I borrow my dad because you want to play? Right. So that breaks my heart a little bit
Mm,
because I knew I had to send him away so I could focus with what we're talking about. So right now, where I don't have to do that, and we can play, I could bring him to, time zone, for example, and just
mm,
play games together. I feel like it's patching a hole that's been growing inside him, which is really good. Although if you were to interview him right now, he would probably say there is an upside of my dad working because then he doesn't see the little things that I do that doesn't make him happy
mm,
like going around the house with no slippers. So right now I notice these things, right? So I have to like
mm,
make sure that I'm a very present parent and really
mm,
instill the right behaviors and attitude because she's
mm,
also going to big school now, right?
mm,
So it's a very different kind of parenting, right?
mm,
Also, the things that I'm able to do with my daughter, 1 year old, was also very different from what I was able to do with my eldest during the time he was one. When he was one, it was still in the middle of the pandemic. So there's very little thing that you can do apart from staying home or going to a road trip where you can't leave the car, right? So right now, I can bring my daughter somewhere new, um, and really see her, you know, grow up in a normal environment without her mask on, right? Um, it's a very different experience. I felt like the second child that I had was not just something that I wanted because I wanted a bigger family, but I think I also needed it with some sort of therapy. So to be able to experience what it really means to be a parent, it's a very different parent as a pandemic parent and a non-pandemic parent, right? And so now that I'm able to do that with my daughter, it reminds me of what I should do to my son as well, or with my son as well.
I thought of another interesting question where, as an HR person, you must know the options, right? So there are people who would be like, I will stay on my current position and I will maybe take a sabbatical. So I keep my position when I'm done with my break intentionally, or kind of after traveling a bit, I'll come back. Or versus a bit more intentional like you, I will just leave the company and I will take a break and then I'll figure out what's next, or I will then see what comes. As an HR person and also making that decision yourself, what do you see as a difference, and how did you come to that conclusion that it will be leaving the company and taking the break and then figuring out next?
I think today sabbatical leaves are they operate quite differently compared to maybe a decade ago. Right now, when you go on sabbatical, you still hold on to that headcount. So the company can't just replace you with somebody, maybe with a contingent worker, maybe. But then I feel that that also puts a significant burden on the company. Well, I do respect that some people or some organizations would offer sabbatical for very critical people, people that they don't want to leave or go to a competitor, or they still have a lot of things to do with that person, right? So I completely respect that. But I don't think that was the situation I was in, right? So I feel like if I was to take a sabbatical or a prolonged leave, it kind of might just cripple the company more than just moving forward and just get somebody to fully replace me or maybe promote somebody internally, right? For me, also as the person going out, right? The mindset I think is different when you know that you have something to go back to versus you know that there's nothing there and that you really have to find your new beginning, right? Um, I say that distinctly because when you know that you have a fallback plan, right, the appreciation for the break may be a little bit different. I can't say this factually because I haven't had a sabbatical and a career break, right? So I can really use personal experiences to compare. But if I were to just visualize, like if I knew that I could come back, I would not be as intentional with how I use my time. And also the 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 feeling that you know what you're getting yourself into once the break is done, I think gives you a sense of complacency. That's just me, right? Like, of course, I know also right now how things move and how AI accelerates things. The job that you've left 1 year ago might be very totally different when you come back to it. I do have colleagues at Canva back in the day who went on parental leave, right? And as you know, in Australia, you can take up to a year or maybe even more. So when they left the job and took on their parental leave, they come back and the role is either no longer there and they're given a new role, or the role is still there but it's totally different. Right? So I can see myself also probably fitting that bucket, right? But then I feel like if I want to really grow, and I've only been in 4 companies, Katie. So a local company, an offshore company, telco company, and Canva. I'm 43 years old, 42 years old. So I feel like before I reach retirement, I want to be able to explore. I want to be able to see what other industries look like, how other companies would operate, right? And I want to see if I can fit in and add value in those spaces as well. So I feel like if I don't move now, it might be I might not be using my time wisely, right? I want to go back to what I told you earlier in this conversation, Katie, about me staying in college quite as long, right? So when I graduated from computer science, of course, my batchmates would go out and become software engineers. When I graduated in HR, we had a very we had a very intimate sort of homecoming, right? And so I was able to meet my old batchmates from back in the day in computer science, and they're now architects, software engineers, senior engineers, and whatnot. And I was a fresh grad. So I felt like I was playing a catch-up game. Right? So I told myself I want to be able to catch up and be where they are and meet them where they are, even if I am 4 years behind. So I was very intentional with the job that I took. Some jobs I took not for the money, but for the experience, so I could propel myself faster compared to everybody else. So I've been only working for uh, close to 16 years, and I was just doing my LinkedIn research, and very few people got to where I am in 16 years. Right? Of course, it's a combination of effort, timing, and luck, right? If the country manager didn't move, then I wouldn't be the head of HR, right? So there are some luck factors into it. But then if I didn't have the skills and the experience for it, then I wouldn't be chosen for the role either. So I feel like, and I keep telling this to people, I think during your early years, I think money should not be the first priority unless you are in need of a, you're in a financial pickle that you really need it. But if you have the bandwidth to take on experience and learn new skills, even if and when money isn't a pressure yet, I would suggest that you take that route. Right? Yeah. So I guess I'm happy where I was able to get myself into. And right now, I keep telling my non-work friends, if ever I join another company, I probably will stay there till I'm 50 and then think again, right?
Mm.
Or I pick my last job before I reach retirement at 60.
During this 1 month of kind of slowing down, maybe not having as rushing into a lot of different commitments and meetings, what did you notice about yourself that you didn't know before whilst you were in the rushing phase?
I wouldn't say that these are the things that I didn't know because I was rushing. I feel like I just didn't have the time and space to do it. And I would like to believe that I'm a very intentional person. I was brought up in a family where every decisions are thought about multiple times before you make it. Right? Initially, I didn't. I initially, Katie, I decided to not get married at all. Right? So I wanted to stay single and just you know
Mm.
do what I do, enjoy life, um, and not be worried with these things that come with family. Funny trivia, just to make this episode quirky. I met my wife on my notice period at Nokia. So we met at Nokia. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was already 1 foot out the door, and I saw this lady in the interview room, and I said, looks promising. And then I used my HRIS access to see, is this person Chinese? Where does this person live and whatnot? Not the best example of using HR systems, but
I'm gonna
you know,
click those.
but I was the HR consultant, so I have to figure out the offer and whatnot. Right? And then when I knew that she was accepting, I retracted my resignation and pursued her. So thankfully the retraction made it worth it, right? So just a funny bit. But so when I shifted my priorities from staying single for life to getting married, of course that shifted many things. I didn't marry for the sake of companionship. Now I wanted a family, right? So every decision that came after had to fuel that motivation, right? But then because the pace of work can be quite, I would say, the feeling where you're being dragged under the bus, and you can't stop the bus because it's just too heavy or too fast. That also was the feeling that I had. So the work was quite heavy. Back at Nokia, we struggled to actually have our first kid, yeah, for both workload, bandwidth, and health reasons. It's quite difficult. So we had to slow down a little bit. Thankfully, we were afforded a little bit of time to really get our priorities in order, and so we were able to conceive one successfully, right? But then what we didn't expect was pandemic, was COVID, and so that kind of pushed everything into high gear again, right? And so we had to like really uh, install a lot of things very ad hoc, very hacky. And this time I was already at camp, so there was a moment of high octane adrenaline rush kind of move. Uh, And then I found out that a year, 2 years later, I found out that my kid was in the spectrum. So I had to be able to, although high function, like you wouldn't know, but that he has that tendency, right? And so we had to slow things down and really carve out some time to bring him to therapy and to, for us in the family, to also slow down the house, create some routines that would make my son sort of coming to terms with how to navigate life despite having that condition, right? And so there are moments like these, Katie, that I feel were serendipitous. I feel like the heavens injected those episodes to slow the series down a little bit and not come to the end of the finale, right? And so I feel like I don't want to live life waiting for these signals. I want to be able to have my hand on the steering wheel, but at the same time, the other hand on the handbrake, knowing when to pull it up and slow things down, right? And so those things came into light when we decided to have another child after the miscarriage. But also, career-wise, I'm not getting younger, right? The kids are getting older. The different force affecting two different generations. My parents are also ailing, right? And there's no other siblings to take good care of them. So I also wanted to spend some time with them while they're able to walk, right? And so there's different responsibilities that I need to make space for. So to answer your question, what I didn't know then was how quick time passes by, right? Meetings tend to make your Mondays feel like any other day, and then just after a few weeks, it's Friday already, and then you spend your Saturdays doing chores, doing your groceries, and then it's Monday again. Right? And so in the Philippines, we have holidays almost every month. And the holidays and these public holidays sort of give you an earmark for how far along in the year you're in. So typically after the Lunar New Year, basically the first quarter is done. And then once we go to Independence Day, you'll know that the first half of the year is done. And then when sem break comes along, you already know that the third quarter is done. And when you hear Mariah Carey singing in the shopping malls, you know it's Christmas time already. So it's 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 those moments where you feel like you're being dragged through time. And I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my family. So I wanted to, now that I've taken an intentional break, I know what it feels like. And I also now know that you don't have to wait 14 years, 16 years to take one. Maybe I could have taken micro versions of this across the last 16 years. Then maybe I need not take one big one right now. Maybe all of these are like maybes, right? Then again, you know, I wouldn't trade these learnings for anything else. I'm glad and I'm very grateful and thankful and fortunate to be able to do this while many people can't, right? But for those that might be listening and might be contemplating and may have the resources, the permission to take one, whether from their boss or from their family, I really suggest that you contemplate really hard on whether do you need it, and maybe if it's not you who needs it, maybe the people that rely on you need it. And if you can take it, take it. But then once you take it, be intentional about it.
I was about to ask you, if anyone have asked you, so how long are you gonna take this break for? Or when do you know that you are done with the break? How do you respond to them if they ask you that?
Well, when I accept that when I made a decision to take a break, I first had a list of things I wanted to do. I wanted to travel with my family and my parents. I want to bring them out. There are places my dad wanted to go that I couldn't because my mom can't be with him by herself. So I made a laundry list, including mundane things like renovations, have the car tuned up, change the tires, and all that. Right? I have a list, and I estimated how long do I need to get all of these things done, right? While also injecting moments of play. Like I wanted to go back to my hobby and play magic, for example, or I wanted to do things for myself, or I wanted to be able to spend a few weeks with my son while he adjusts to big school. While I also want to see my daughter, you know, um, do her first milestones, right? So when all of these are done, I think it's also the right time to go back to work. I think that creates a very good ending to match a very good beginning, right? I think breaks oftentimes feel not enough because you felt that you weren't able to do the things that you needed to do or want. So I don't want to feel that way when I get out of this break. So I'm going through that list and I'm close to the middle. I still have maybe a few weeks left before I explore. But then, of course, being an HR person, I don't want to shut my doors. So I'm talking to people, I'm exploring opportunities, I'm working on side hustles a little bit, doing a little bit of consulting, doing pro bono coaching. I'm also coach. I I don't want to lose touch of the thing that I've been doing for decades, right? And still want to continue learning and growing. Um, yeah. So I think breaks should be finite while still being intentional. You have to have a definition of done. What is your definition of done, right? I think that's a vernacular in software engineering or DoD, definition of done. What is your
Mm.
DoD for your break, right? So that when you go back into your new scrum or to your new sprint, right, um, you don't feel any regrets. And you can always tell yourself, hey, I think it's really now time to psych yourself back up to start working because you've you've done what you've set yourself to do. You've closed that book. Now time to write a new one.
I really appreciate the openness of all of the different kind of possible turning points of your career and life. And I think all of that goes to show like the resilience muscles that you've had. And also combining that as an HR person, I feel like you would understand and empathize with people who come to you for maybe similar challenges or even more challenges. What would be your advice for someone who's currently done or close to finishing their break, whether it's parental leave or career break or any other types of break, that they're worried about the narrative of when they go back to the workforce? Like people would ask them, oh, so why did you take a break? What did you learn in the break? Or what did you do in the break? What would you say to them if they're worried about the narrative of explaining themselves or, hey, here's why I'm coming back. Here's what I can still bring to the table after a bit of a gap?
Interesting question, Katie. I think the narrative depends on where the other person is coming from. I've in during my time when I was on break, some people would ask me why, but I can sense that the the origins of that question come from envy. Not envy in a bad way, but like envy because they also kind of want to do it, but they can't, right? And so my narrative should match that origin. Like, hey, I did this because of this, keep it short. But then I also reframe it back to the person who asked, like, hey, I kind of sense that you are kind of wanting to do the things that I'm doing. What's stopping you? Right? Because the narrative of my break is for me. Even if I give them the story behind it, will it change their life? I don't think so. But if I reframe it back to them and ask them, hey, why? Maybe that could add value in that conversation. If the question comes from a point from an origin of curiosity, then feel free to share as much detail as you want. Maybe they just didn't know what it looks like because maybe they haven't had one, but they're not as if contemplating of having one right now. Right? Then there are also some people who could be skeptical. They have their own conspiracy theories. Maybe you left because you were about to be redundant. Maybe you left because you didn't work out with the new boss and whatnot, right? Whether those are true or not, right? Whether those are facts or assumptions, right? Whether you affirm them or confirm these to that person or not, again, it doesn't add so much value. It just gives them another topic to unpack and maybe talk about over beers and coffee. I don't know. But it doesn't add value. So I don't think that I am in the position to share that. Well, I'm not saying that that was my situation. All I'm saying is that they can have their theories, but you can also just not entertain it, right? If you feel that they're coming from that, just tell them quick. Just tell them honestly, hey, I left for my reasons and my reasons alone, right? And this is the funny thing. So when I post stuff on social media about me and my family on trips and whatnot, people who had those conspiracy theories at the beginning came back to me and said, "Hey, Vanson, I kind of now understand why you really need to take a break. Because back in the day, you only post LinkedIn work stuff, and now you paste on social media, right?" So I tell them, it's you guys that make this break complicated. For me, it was straightforward. So maybe you might want to use that energy to think about how you want to take care of yourself and your family, right? Rather than trying to speculate what other people are doing with their time.
You yourself have that software engineering background. Now, of course, in the AI world, it's almost like you can't go without a day mentioning the word using some sort of like AI tools. How did you see that interaction with, let's say, workforce? Like by the time you go back after a break, and at the same time, not just the interaction with the AI tools at work, but also people's anxiety about what do I even do? Like, if my job can be replaced or part of my job can be replaced, like from an HR angle, blending in with that software engineering background, how would you respond to some of these very hot topics of people worrying and thinking about stuff of jobs and security and where do I prepare myself? What's your take?
Um, I was explaining this to one of my friends recently, right? And I told that friend, AI is not the concept of AI taking jobs is not new. So when we had the telephone, the people who connected lines in the back end lost their jobs.
Mm.
When we had the ATM, some people in the front desk of the banks lost their job because now you can make withdrawals and deposits without people. So it's not a new concept, right? The only thing that we don't, I think what makes this different is because AI is very aggressive. It accelerates a lot of things and it can do things that people can't, right? We just think quickly, generate ideas very, very rapidly, right? Unlike other modern day innovations like the ATM, yeah, it can only do two things, which is to withdraw and deposit. That's it. And maybe pay bills for some more advanced machines, right? But it can't do many other things that the human teller can. But in AI, the narrative is a bit different. It's more aggressive, right? I think that's what makes people fear it. But the concept is not new, right? So I believe that the narrative should also be not totally new. Technology will always be there beside people. And the amount of the pie that technology can eat depends on how much you will give it, right? If you will upskill yourself, if you will try to go into areas of work that you might not be familiar yet now, or might even not be comfortable with right now, then you have to, because AI is not going to stop, right? I've read somewhere that AI is in its dumbest form yet. And so where will you be as AI is getting more and more intelligent? Shouldn't you be trying to keep up? But maybe keeping up is also not as simple right now because you don't keep up with knowledge because you can't keep up with AI. But what you can stay ahead with is the things AI can't do, which is the human condition, being innovative, being more critical in how you think, being empathetic, showing leadership. These are the areas I think that will blossom over the years. If we were to have three pillars or three categories, right, in terms of AI, right now, ideas are very few, implementation medium, but usage of AI is a lot. Give it a few years, I think it will reverse, where ideas will be a lot, implementation will be slightly bigger, but the usage of AI will be little because it will be like any normal modern day innovation, right? So over the course of the next maybe 3 to 5 years, when it becomes a normal thing, everything you buy, even your refrigerator, will have AI to tell you you run out of eggs, right? You will adapt as a human being, right? But then will you adapt reactively or will you adapt proactively? Those who choose the former will definitely have their jobs at risk. But those who will choose the latter, which is to be more proactive about it and being more aggressive in accumulating skills, right, are the ones that can capitalize on the modern world that AI can create.
For those of us who've only been to, including myself, who've only been to Philippines for traveling, is it like to work in the Philippines in general, as a culture or as a way of working?
Well, working in the Philippines is, for me, since I haven't really worked elsewhere for a very long time, although if I were to compare short-term assignments in different countries, what makes the Philippine environment very interesting to work in is because there's a sense of family within companies because of course our Filipino culture is still pretty much well grounded into organic nuclear families, right? So what we are at home is typically what we also bring into the workplace, right? So colleagues are more than colleagues. You really spend some time getting to know them. The work is shared as if it's chores. We tend to um, extend a hand if somebody needs it. It is not uncommon for Filipinos to go the extra mile if they feel like the effort is worth it. Right? But of course, part of the culture is also that we are oftentimes prefer pleasantries, and if we can avoid confrontations, we would. So typically, workplaces are generally calm and peaceful. Although there are some, I would say, negative sides to that because of course conflict tends to bottle up until it can't be bottled up anymore. And so but of course that's not unique to the Filipino culture. But apart from that, um, overseas companies who have offices here in the Philippines tend to work and like working with Filipinos because of the dedication that we have, the respect that we have for each other. We're also very industrious. If you're following the news, the Philippines is typically a developing country, uh, but of course its economy is also going through some challenges. So people really need to work hard to get somewhere in life to be able to provide and to be able to elevate their lifestyle, right? So they are willing to give as much of themselves as they can to give their family or their children a better life. And so that motivation is exhibited in the workplace through productivity, innovation, and a different level of camaraderie.
One thing I do have to say that people in the Philippines do bring really good energy and positivity. It's like a cold DM leading to, us doing this podcast. I think I can attest to that. For those of us who've only been to, including myself, who've only been to Philippines for traveling, is it like to work in the Philippines in general, as a culture or as a way of working?
Well, working in the Philippines is, for me, since I haven't really worked elsewhere for a very long time, although if I were to compare short-term assignments in different countries, what makes the Philippine environment very interesting to work in is because there's a sense of family within companies because of course our Filipino culture is still pretty much well grounded into organic nuclear families, right? So what we are at home is typically what we also bring into the workplace, right? So colleagues are more than colleagues. You really spend some time getting to know them. The work is shared as if it's chores. We tend to um, extend a hand if somebody needs it. It is not uncommon for Filipinos to go the extra mile if they feel like the effort is worth it. Right? But of course, part of the culture is also that we are oftentimes prefer pleasantries, and if we can avoid confrontations, we would. So typically, workplaces are generally calm and peaceful. Although there are some, I would say, negative sides to that because, of course, conflict tends to bottle up until it can't be bottled up anymore. And so, but of course, that's not unique to the Filipino culture. But apart from that, um, overseas companies who have offices here in the Philippines tend to work and like working with Filipinos because of the dedication that we have, the respect that we have for each other. We're also very industrious. If you're following the news, the Philippines is typically a developing country, uh, but of course, its economy is also going through some challenges. So people really need to work hard to get somewhere in life to be able to provide and to be able to elevate their lifestyle, right? So they're willing to give as much of themselves as they can to give their family or their children a better life. And so that motivation is exhibited in the workplace through productivity, innovation, and a different level of camaraderie.
One thing I do have to say that people in the Philippines do bring really good energy and positivity. It's like a cold DM leading to, us doing this podcast. I think I can attest to that. I do have a few kind of fun questions for you, like kind of quick answer, quick question. In your experience, what is one Canva feature that most people don't know about or don't use enough of?
I'm a fond of the Canva whiteboard, right, where you
Mm.
can collaborate. Right? I feel like many people just use Canva for poster making, docs, and presentation, which is the first ever feature it brought to the world. But I think collaboration in the workspace, I think, is what Canva truly is wanting to put into the organization. So I think people should use that more because that's where really a lot of ideas can come together, powered with Canva's AI engine. I think it's going to really, revolutionize how people brainstorm and ideate.
And what is your personal go-to AI tool right now that you've been playing with?
So of course, Canva, I use Canva. So even if I'm no longer at Canva, when you're an alumni of Canva, you have a lifetime Canva Pro access. So I'm really milking that access, but I'm also trying to explore Cowork, Claude Cowork. So I wanted to see if I can have multiple secretaries to navigate the complexities of life. So I'm trying to figure what that looks like for me and for my future work.
And lastly, if you could tell your younger self one thing that now with the benefit of introspection, what would you tell your younger self about?
I will give my younger self the same advice Melanie Perkins, the founder of Canva, told me when I was new. It was if ever I find myself in a situation where I can choose to be kind. Right? I think the world needs more of it. No matter what technology brings, no matter who comes in and out of your life, I think everybody deserves kindness, including yourself. You have to be kind to yourself so that you can be kind to others.
If you do like this episode, please subscribe and follow our future episodes release. Don't be afraid to be a firefly and figure out your own future career path with us. Let's go.